So if you're just watching the video, we're starting this in the middle because I just came back from I just had a big power failure. The laptop, the cooling considerations, engineered for less power. The fans used to move the hot air. Limit the use of the laptop battery as much as possible. I have done that. I was fortunate when this happened that it was plugged in, hadn't been used on battery a lot. The battery should have been fully charged or pretty much fully charged. The battery can and will be a heat source. You probably have experienced that with your phone when you use it a lot, talk for a long time. The phone heats up. A lot of that is from the battery itself providing the power. Laptop cooling pads designed to sit under the laptop to protect the user from getting burned or getting hot, overheating, and overheating the device itself. A lot of people do some kind of strange things with laptops. House fire started because somebody had a laptop sitting on a pillow, and they can get really hot, obviously, sitting on a pillow, and then it would sink down in the pillow. So now we've stopped all the airflow in it. These things can get very, very hot. Laptop to move air away from the device. We want to do that. We talked a little bit about the CPUs. The CPUs could be, directly attached or surface mounted, which is basically soldered onto the motherboard, or they can be slot mounted. We have fans, obviously, to cool them off. We want them to be cool. Battery use limit because the battery can heat things up, and then there are cooling pads that are available. The device here is designed to allow airflow around the laptop. The next topic is tablets. And most of you, many of you, I'm sure you all have smartphones. A lot of you probably have, maybe all of you have tablets, and everybody's got a different one. Cheapskate, I have Android. We actually do have mini iPads also, older ones, but the larger than the phones, smaller than a laptop. The operating systems include the iOS, Android, Windows 7, Windows 8, 8.1, 8.1 RT, 10, and BlackBerry OS. Barb made a really good point early on about why would you want an iOS? Why would you want to pay the difference? And she said FaceTime, and FaceTime is one of those things that, yeah, you may want to do. A lot of people, and I know several people who are maybe divorced, and they don't have custody of the kids. They have a regular call every night to talk to the kids face to face. Military people deployed or on a trip or something like that, talk to the kids. That's a really big deal. Talk to the husband or wife, or girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other, whatever else. So that's an excellent point on why you want to do this. iOS tends to be more closely integrated. All of Apple's products tend to be more closely integrated between the hardware and the software. They own the whole thing, so they're that way. The disadvantage to that is it makes things a little more expensive. IBM PCs, Windows machines, if you go to buy a Windows laptop, you get one for what, a couple $100. If you go to buy a Mac laptop, you're probably talking $500–600 minimum, maybe more than that. So if anybody's looked at it, go ahead and put it in the chat for a price that you might know for those things. It depends on what you want to do with the device, and that's always going to be the case. It's the same way with a desktop. How much do you need? What kind of desktop do you really need? How much do you want to spend for it? If you're going to game, then you're going to need some high-speed video. You're going to need some high-speed processing. You need some high-speed memory. If you're going to surf the internet, type some documents on a word processor, maybe use a spreadsheet, you don't need all that power. You don't need to buy that. Same thing, I think, with tablets. What are you going to do with a tablet? each of them has a different capability. You're just going to use Wi-Fi, or do you need the cellular component for it also? Because you can get these things obviously that go on cellular too. These next slides are from the table that was in the book comparing tablets and laptops, and on them I don't have the headings, but it goes laptop and then tablet. A hardware component of a laptop can be fixed and replaced when the issue arises. Some things can be replaced, not everything can. Not everything is easy to replace on them. Still fairly common with newer laptops. Laptops generally are considered to be expendable kinds of devices. They're designed to last, X number of years and then to be replaced, because we really can't, as you have seen if you've looked into one or tried to look into one or even looked into a picture of one, there's no place to put an expansion card. If we can do it with a USB or with an HDMI or something like that, we can expand it. But as far as expanding the internal capabilities of it, probably not going to happen. There are in the laptop few field serviceable parts in a tablet. Makes it difficult to repair. A tablet is that parts are soldered and not socketed. Many of them, when something breaks, in most cases the entire tablet needs to be replaced. They don't really break it often. They don't have any moving parts. They don't have any spinning parts. It's all kind of solid state. The electronics, the electronics that we build today is so much better than it was than they were 10 years ago. That it's really amazing. Hard drives, even though they spin and they have moving parts, hard drives last a whole lot longer. It used to be that if you could get a hard drive, was expected to fail after 5 years. So all of this has gotten better. Upgrades, the hard drive CPU can be upgraded, and I want to say maybe. Hard drive, probably, you just got to find the right size and the right connector. CPU is the maybe part. There may not be another CPU made for that motherboard. If needed to meet the OS requirements or to add more functionality to the laptop. And on the tablets, typically not upgradable. They may have a software upgrade, but we're not going to put more memory in it. We're not going to put a faster CPU in it, those kinds of things. We can, on some of the devices, put external storage on it, but that is about the extent of what we can do to those things. Storage components cannot be upgraded. The internal storage components we can have some, at least in Androids, we can typically put in a micro SD card in them. Parts are soldered. An upgrade a tablet is that the parts are soldered and not socketed. Touch interface. A lot of laptops do now come with a touch interface. You purchase specific laptops that feature it, but it's not in all laptops. It's in many laptops today. Tablets are totally going to be touch. There's no mouse that goes on those things. Touch technology allows the user to interact with the tablet. Primary input method in tablets, touch interface, interaction between the user and the OS. Multi-touch is a technology used on the screen and other mobile devices. The multi-touch allows us to expand and contract, multi-touch, stretch different things. Can recognize more than one contact at a time, allows the pinch and zoom of the screen portion of the device. Storage, laptops may have mobile versions, traditional mechanical hard drives. We know that we're probably going to have at least one USB port where we can put an external USB drive on it, put in a thumb drive or one of those other devices in order to have extra storage. SSDs, higher storage capacity than solid-state drives. Price of SSD drives has come down, and they're starting to show up in more laptops. Advantage SSD, obviously, and they really have come down in price. When they first came out, I thought they were outrageously expensive, but people still bought them. Prices stayed close to the same for a while, but the storage capacity increased, and now the prices have come down. SSD is a better choice for a laptop because if you want to move it while it's operating, if it has a spinning hard drive, you still have that read-write head that you can bounce around with its 10 micron, 10/1 millionth of an inch clearance, a clearance less than the width of a hair, that if you move it wrong and it bounces off of the surface of the hard drive, then you may have destroyed some data. When you shut it down, the read-write head goes to what's called a landing zone, a non-data area, so that it can crash onto the surface without doing any damage. Tablets come equipped with SSDs because of the space limitations. And I don't know the space limitations, and I don't know that with the thickness, with the size of an SSD, or of a tablet rather, that there's any hard drive that would ever even think about fitting in one. Are made up with a number of flash chips. We saw an image of the internal parts of one of those in one of the earlier sessions. Laptops can run a number of different operating systems. We can run Linux, or we can run Windows. It says Unix. Unix actually runs on a mainframe. We can run OS 10, the Mac OS, on a laptop, on an Apple laptop, obviously. Tablets are generally only going to run the OS that came on the device. That OS may be upgraded. You may go from one Android version to another, from iOS version whatever to iOS version next, and then each of those, after they upgrade it, then they come back and fix it for you, just like Windows does. So the comparison between the two, and I'm sure that probably wasn't anything magic to any of you. Smartphones, iPhones, Android phones, Windows phones, Blackberry is still in business. The BlackBerry is actually the most secure of all of the devices. I think it's the only one still that meets the NSA security requirements. We have security on some of these things. We can put in a password on it for the screen, and it uses that password. Then we can use that to encrypt all the data that's on the device. So if you haven't done that and you want the data encrypted, you need to do that. So we have the different ones. The wearable devices, smartwatch communicates with the, and I think smartwatch, there is an Android, but I think smartwatch is still primarily an Apple product. It gives you notifications about text, phone calls, or interacts with emails there. It shows up, calendar events. It interacts with your mobile device. And then a fitness monitor, same thing. Fitness monitors, how many steps did you take today? How much did you run? How many calories did you burn? Some of them will monitor your sleep. Communicate via Bluetooth with your mobile device. Can be either your tablet or your phone for those. Glasses, I don't know if the Google Glasses are still going or not, but glasses allows us to have a visual interaction with our mobile devices. And then the headset over there, it's going to be a Bluetooth headset that we can use to talk on the phone, on the device, communicate with the device via Bluetooth and the microphone. Phablets, larger than smartphones and smaller than tablets. What was it? Was one of the Samsung devices that came out was a huge telephone, and it was bigger than any of the smartphones had been to that time. and was smaller than a tablet, so it got the name phablets. So when you look at this thing, at this slide, smartphones 5 inches or less. And when we measure screen size, it's measured on the diagonal. It's not measured across, it's not measured up and down, but screen size, television screen size, tablet screen size, smartphone screen size are all measured diagonally. So phablets 5.5 inches to 7 inches are going to be those, and then tablets are going to be 7 inches and above. 7 inch, I think what, 7 inch, 9 inch, 10 inch, and then there's some 11 and maybe 12 inch tablets available. E-readers, they're similar to tablets, but they don't have as much functionality. The two major providers, Amazon and Barnes & Noble, you can get a reader, an e-reader that is pretty cheap, and what you can use it for usually is to read books. Some of them have web browsing capability, but they typically are not going to have all of the app capability that you'd have in a tablet or in a smartphone. Similar to tablets, size to conform to standard paper book sizes. They're optimized for reading text. They work well in bright areas as well as dark areas. They use a technology called electronic paper. They have a long battery life, store lots of books on them, Wi-Fi networking to download content. I saw an interview one time on a business show. The guy was said that he got into an airplane and was surprised at the number of people that weren't using tablets, because he thought that everybody was going to have a tablet at the time. And this was several years ago. A lot of them were using e-readers, and they were using e-readers because of the weight of the device. They're still going to be lighter than tablets. Tablets have gotten a lot lighter over the years, but the e-readers are going to be less strenuous, I guess would be the word to hold, than the tablets are. Smart cameras, talked about those, can have Wi-Fi, NFC, which is near field connectivity, GPS built in. We can take videos with the cameras. It may have an Android operating system or other operating system installed in it. Efficient uploading and sharing of photos, so that you can do the same thing with your phone. I understand that, because the phones and the tablets, the cameras have gotten better and better and better over time. Instead of carrying, and I've got a camera that you may see in the background sitting over in the corner. We occasionally take it someplace, but typically what you do with pictures is take pictures with your phone, and then you can upload them directly to your Facebook page, or send them out on Twitter, or put them in LinkedIn, or put them in Dropbox, whatever you want to do with them at the time. But we do have smart cameras which have capabilities to do those things also. I think it's interesting here that we have this smart camera, looks just like a telephone on the back side. GPS, Global Positioning System, derives accurate location information is received from, as this shows, data is retrieved from multiple satellites. You do have to update the devices because routes change. They put in new roads, they move roads. The ones that I always liked was when I was driving with a GPS and it was a reconstructed highway that took a slightly different path. It would show you in the middle of a field and then ask you to turn around, make a U-turn. They sometimes panic, I think, but I use them all the time because it's hard to find paper maps anymore. Connection types, we just experienced that with me. One of them, the Wi-Fi hotspot. I use the phone for the Wi-Fi hotspot up to the cell, laptop connected to the hotspot. We were able to start the class. Other types of communications that you may have, NFC, near field, and it shows the phone the phone here close to a payment device. You can use them for payment as long as near field communications. Their distance is in inches and not in meters, like we have. Bluetooth supposed to be what, 10 meters, I think. Wi-Fi 100 meters. This is just a couple of inches. You need to get them close together. You can use it for payment information. You can use it to exchange data between phones as long as they both support it and bring it together. A couple of different plug types here. One of the reasons that we've kind of gotten a standardized plug, Android uses the micro B plug here. The mini B plug was around for a long time. Each of everybody had their own proprietary port, so that if you had a Sony camera to try to transfer stuff, it used the mini B plug. Then I want to plug in my phone, it uses the micro B plug. The European Union kind of dictated that there would be a standard plug that they're all going to use, or you couldn't sell stuff in Europe. So this is where the micro B. Apple obviously went a different route with the Lightning ports. I love the Lightning port because I can't plug it in backwards. It goes right in and it just works. My micro B with a tablet, I've got to get it lined up. And I guess it's the plug on the tablet itself, or the receptacle on the tablet itself, because regardless of which one I try, it's difficult to get it into charge mode. So those different plugs there. Bluetooth, we've talked about. Bluetooth for the personal area network, where we can have different devices. We can have a headset, speakers, maybe connect to your the entertainment system in your car so that you can take phone calls there. Play Pandora through the sound system of the car. Those sorts of things. Bluetooth in order to connect to these things. Infrared. Infrared was early on wireless system, very short range. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi don't get stopped by walls, for instance. Infrared does. Infrared is visible. Well, it's not visible. It's just above the visible range of light. And the resurgence is it goes into some phones so that you can use the phone to control televisions or speakers, sound bars, or DVRs, DVD players, whatever else you may be able to use with. And then, having said that, a lot of the devices now really are going to Bluetooth type of, or at least a radio frequency type of control for the wirelesses, or for the remote controls. Then the mobile hotspot tethering, again, demonstration tonight. I was fortunate my provider allows me to tether, that I could turn on a mobile hotspot on the phone and use the data, and Lord knows how much I used. I'll check just out of curiosity how much data you use to tether to start the class when we had this power outage. And again, I think it just demonstrates the flexibility of wireless devices. Accessories that are available in these, I plugged in a bunch of pictures of some of the different ones. Headsets, you have the headset plug, the little aqua, I guess, color one down in the lower left-hand corner. It's called a tip and ring. You have tip, ring, and sleeve, and this allows you to have stereo audio on your system. We can have speakers, Bluetooth speakers, or headphone jack could go into the speakers. I didn't put a picture of it on there. Game pads, wireless game pads to enable player to player or to gameplay or navigate an app. Docking stations we've looked at earlier, provides other functionality. Extra battery chargers. This down here, if you don't have a replaceable battery, this is basically a portable battery. It says it's a charger. It could be a charger. It carries stored energy in it so that when you're running out of power, you can plug it into the portable device, phone or tablet, and recharge your battery. Most of them, many of them, I won't say most, but many of them, mine at least, does not come with a battery area that you could take a battery out and put a new one in. The old ones did. Many of the new ones don't. Batteries last longer. Battery technology has gotten a lot better. Protective coverings, you can get the covers to go on the screens, although I think that the screens have gotten an awful lot better than when we talked about. You used to have the little plastic covers that stuck on the screen to keep from scratching, to keep from getting it dirty. The new screens don't smudge like the original ones did. The original screens, I could use one for a day and then I'd have to clean it unless I had one of those protective covers over it. If you've got a small business, or if you're doing a bake sale for the school or whatever, a credit card reader that plugs into the device could be something that you would use. And then flash memory cards over here, SD and micro SD cards that are usable at least in the most of the Android devices. And then we have the the Bluetooth headset here. Handling techniques: avoid placing mobile devices in pockets. Don't tell me that, because that's where I carry mine. It can be damaged. One of the issues, people that were carrying them in their back pockets, they're going for the flexible screen so that you don't break the screens there. I think one of the new screens, that there was some reports, and I don't know if it was true or not, some reports that people were putting them in their back pockets and they were breaking them due to the stress on them. But the flexible screens are something that they're working on to avoid those things. When they were putting in a cable here, they will break. The guy was using an iPad of some sort, had a big case on it, dropped it in the middle of the floor, and it did shatter the screen or crack the screen. He could still finish his job, but the device, or the screen at least, would have to be replaced. Avoid placing fingerprints on the screen. The screen protector will help there. Again, I think that the screens are better. I don't know. You guys can say if you have trouble with fingerprints on your screen or not. I have to clean mine occasionally, but it's not a daily evolution. Avoid dropping them. I don't have, as you can see on this, I don't have a case on this one. They're recommended so that if you do drop them, it helps to absorb some of the shock. And that's the use protective cases wherever possible. Avoid extreme temperatures, extreme hot and extreme cold. And you want to avoid extreme temperature changes. And that's for all of your devices. If you, for instance, leave a laptop sitting in a cold car below freezing and bring it into a warm room, it's going to get some condensation inside of it. You need to let it sit and warm up gradually before you turn it on, so that you don't have the condensation and create shorted circuitry within the device itself. To say maintenance, to help with cooling, keep the air ducts and the dust and clear of dust and debris. Air in a can is helpful for that. You can clean your keyboard, blow out stuff in the keyboard, clean the vent areas and in the laptops. It's usually going to blow the stuff in. Hopefully you can blow it all the way through the laptop to get the dust out. It's hard to open them up to clean them. You can open up a desktop, and you should occasionally take the panel off, the cover panel off, and use air in a can, and you want to use it because it's clean air. Air compressors are not good because even oil-less air compressors are going to have some oil in the air. So you want to use the purified, I guess, air that they put in the can. You don't need a whole lot of it. They're not inexpensive to my mind for what you get, but it's what you really do want to use. Follow the manufacturing instructions for changing batteries. Approved battery chargers. Don't expose the batteries to water or fire. Don't drop, throw, or otherwise jolt the batteries. I guess you're going to have a battery war. This thing could hurt if you would throw them. I guess throw them to get them into an area. You want to place them. You don't want to crack the case. If you do that, the battery's basically done. It's not basically done. The battery is done. Use approved batteries for each device. Power management features to extend the battery life. Power management on the mobile devices to extend battery life. I don't use mine enough that it runs down on a day. I could probably go 2 days, but I do charge it every night, and hopefully it's not. And I haven't checked. I do occasionally run the batteries down to 0, and you should do that sometime on a tablet. Put a video on, play the video until the tablet is absolutely flat, as the Brits would say, in battery, and then recharge the battery. That will prevent or help it if it's trying to establish a battery memory. And when I talk about battery memory, the NiCad batteries, and this was an issue for a number of years, if you ran it down to 25% and then charged it, 25% became empty, became 100% empty. So you do need to occasionally run these things down so that you don't get the memory issue of them. When shipping or transporting, protective enclosure, and avoid carrying the devices by a corner. Me to avoid the corner so I wouldn't drop it, but so that you don't do damage to them. Operating system environments, the best practices. Exposure to high temperature can cause expansion within the portable devices, compromise the circuits. High temperature can also lead to failure of the cooling systems. High temperatures and extreme temperatures in either direction are not going to be good for the devices. And then the rapid temperature fluctuation there talks about and temperatures such as those seen when transporting a device from one climate to another could lead to condensation in the device, and the devices should be allowed to come to room temperature before you turn them on. Condensation basically create a little rainstorm inside your computer, which will then probably create a little lightning storm within your computer, which will then create a little smoke storm within your computer, and then you can go down to the computer store and buy yourself a new one. Low humidity, winter typically here, when you run around and shuffle your feet on the carpet and then touch somebody's ear, or when you're just walking across a carpet area and touch a doorknob and get a shock. It's what we're talking about with ESD, electrostatic discharge. That is going to occur more readily in low humidity environments, and the low humidity ranges from 10 to 35% there in the slide. RFI is radio frequency interference, erratic errors in mobile devices, radio towers around two-way radios, cordless phone, microwave ovens, other devices that are using that frequency range. And in the 2.4 gigahertz, there are a lot of devices that use that frequency range. The 2.4 is an unregulated, which means that anybody can use it, and you can't do anything about it. If somebody put up a 2.4 gigahertz station that just blasted the world, it's unregulated. They could do that, which would then knock all of your devices offline. General issues, display issues. We don't have a display. I was just seeing what I have here on these things. Common touch, common wireless connectivity. We'll just look at what they are. Battery issues, extremely short battery life, battery power issues, no power when connected to AC. Different things are going to, I think that I have some slides on a number of these. Ghost cursors, slow performance, frozen system lockout, application issues, apps not loading, unable to decrypt email overheating, no sound on the speakers. Common problems: non-standard key placement, function keys not knowing where they are or how to use the function key is not working. We don't have a numeric keyboard on the small devices because they may not fit, particularly the smaller ones. I said the one that I was using tonight did have a numeric keyboard, numeric keys on it. Sticking keys, we already had that experience one time tonight, and yes, they do. That happens. These devices collect dirt. Keyboards collect dirt. They do need to be cleaned occasionally. Canned air, probably the best way to do that. Keyboard too small, issue with the very small laptops so that the keys are so close together that you can't actually type. And again, if you're going to buy one of these devices, try it out. Keyboard not responding. In a laptop, that can be a number of issues. On a desktop, keyboard not responding, the system doesn't recognize the keyboard, and that can go back to the BIOS. If it's a specialized keyboard, you may need a keyboard driver. Laptop could be and you saw the wires there that go into it, could be that it's slipped out. Number of different things can cause those issues. Touchscreen issues, they're dirty. The touch is not registering the correct location. If that's the case, then we may need to calibrate the screen, and you can calibrate the touch screens. Non-responsive, these things have a grid on top of the screen itself that are responsive to the touch. The grid tells the system where it is based upon the calibration. If it's not responsive, could be, I guess, a number of issues. Could be that grids failed, could be the interpretations failed, could be that the system doesn't know where you are in the touch. Damage to the screen, and I think that you can replace the laptop screens if you damage them. Sometimes rather than replacing the parts, it's easier to just buy a new device, especially as the prices continue to go down significantly. Can't see the screen elements, could be the backlighting, and we looked at the screen itself that we don't have, and in a laptop, if you have AC required, could be the inverter has an issue that we're not being able to power the backlight. We don't have enough battery power to power the backlight's not coming on. User wearing gloves on the touch screen. There are some gloves that you can buy that have a special patch on them, basically, I guess, that you can use. You can keep the gloves on and use the touch screens with them, but typically if you're wearing gloves, touch screens are not going to work. They're capacitive. They're looking for the potential difference, just like we talk about ESD. They're looking for the potential difference. They're capacitive, and capacitors have two different charges on a plate, and that's the way that we do that, and then it discharges and it detects our presence. Intermittent wireless connectivity. We've talked about a number of things that can cause problems with our wireless, different things that can interfere, the towers, power lines, microwave ovens, wireless access points on the same channel that are too close together. No Bluetooth connectivity. Bluetooth runs at the same frequency as Wi-Fi. It uses 2.4 gigahertz, just like our 802.11. B and G and N use 2.4 gigahertz. No wireless connectivity. Power out. We haven't connected the NIC. The wireless has become disconnected for whatever reason. We should have visual indications when those things happen with it. Disassembly best practices, and this is one taken apart Document and label all the cable, screw locations, same thing that we talked about doing with the laptop. And again, I'm a fan of taking pictures of these things as close up as you can get before you take them apart, so that when you put it back in, you say, oh, so that's the way it's supposed to go. Does this side go up or does that side go up? Mark them so that you can put them back in the same order. Same thing when you're taking a computer apart. If you take even a desktop apart, where does everything go? Label it, mark it, whatever you do. We were at a relative's house, and they were trying to put up an awning that he had for years, and it was like, where does this piece go? Where does this piece go? And I said, why don't you just label these things? 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3. Label these things when you take them apart so that you can put them back together and not have extra parts. I'm a great one for putting things back together, and then I got a few extra parts when I get done with it. Manufacturer's documentation to locate components. Manufacturer's documentation to tell you where the snaps are, how you're going to get the thing apart. Because if you ever try to take an old phone apart, it's not obvious in many cases how to get the thing apart in order to look at it, and then use the appropriate hand tools. Over here, guidelines for mobile devices and OS, password problems, a way to develop to remember and safely record mobile passwords. I use, and I'll show you what it is because you won't be able to see the passwords, a piece of software called KeyPass, and it has a master password that I just missed. Again, that stores the passwords encrypted in a file. Well, I guess that I don't know what my password is. I really don't. I really don't. This is not good. Try one more time. I'm trying to go too fast. Yay. It will then list what they are, what your username is, because we got different usernames in a lot of different places, and then what the password is. You can, for instance, go in here, copy the password, and when you copy the password, here you can see the timer, it actually times out. So something like that with the number of passwords that you have today may be useful in order to do that. And this one actually does have a mobile version that you can use on it too. But a way to record, to safely record mobile passwords, should you write them down? Everybody says, no, I don't think that you cannot write them down. What you don't want to do is write them down and then stick them on the monitor or under. The favorite one is that we had was instructors that like we did have one that actually did write it down and put it on the monitor. The favorite was to put it on a sticky under their calendar that was on your desk. So that's not a safe way to do it. To record them, yes. Put them someplace safe, lock them in a drawer, lock them in a desk, and you should, in a enterprise environment, have all those passwords written down somewhere and locked up in a sealed envelope in case something happens. If you get sick, some really bad disease, you get sick and are put into a 3-month medical coma, how are people going to get into these things? Some are not as easy to get into without knowing the passwords as others. Don't exceed the allowable number of failed password attempts. In the government, if you exceed that, and I have, you tell them that I exceeded it, or they'll tell you, click here, and we'll send you a letter that you'll get in about 3 weeks. So now I'm locked out of my retired pay account. for 3 weeks until I get the letter. So do record these things. Use something, particularly those. Don't put them someplace where other people can get them. In your house, probably safe. Type in a document, encrypt the document after you type it before you leave it on the computer, and then print it and put it in a file in a locked drawer or in a desk drawer someplace where only you go. Use recovery password instead of restoring the device, and there are typically going to be lots of ways to get it for some of the devices. Restoring the device, yeah, we're going to get into it, but we're going to lose a lot of stuff along the way. Back up the device on a regular basis, and I think most of them do regular backups for you. Refer to the user manual for specific restore methods. If you're restoring it using a PC, turn the device off, connect the USB cable, and then turn the power on the device so it will be detected by the computer itself. Check for third-party Bluetooth unlocker programs, and be sure to synchronize your data regularly, which we talked about. Secure passwords. Use a passphrase. Special characters, the pound sign, the @ sign, the $sign, %, and all those. If you use them in the password, it makes it much more difficult for a password cracking program to crack it. We used to use some, and if we put a special character in it, it might go from 4 hours to 3 days, or it might go from 3 days to 2 weeks, or whatever else. The length of the password and the characters that you use can be significant, so do use special characters in your passwords. If you use capital PA $W0RD1, yep, that's what's called a secure password. It's not a good password, but it's going to be a secure one. Passphrases to use, and that's what I think most of the experts have come up with now. You should use passphrases. Password length to make it strong but easy to remember, using the characters that you can, and most of them won't let you reuse passwords, obviously. They want to let you reuse parts of passwords. Can't use dictionary words. Dictionary attacks really go very, very quickly. Don't share passwords with anybody. Regularly change device passwords and avoid using the same password on a mobile device and other accounts. They say that it's difficult to do. That little software that I showed you will generate secure passwords for you if you want it to. We're getting close to the end. I know you're wondering if I'm ever going to finish. Troubleshoot hardware crashes. Identify when the issue started. Recent hardware changes. Check if the battery has enough power or has any physical damage. Check if the device is getting charged properly. Is it getting to 100%? A brand new device should be charged for at least 4 hours before you use it. I know we all want to try it out first, and oh yeah, it's at 12% power. Okay, I should plug it in and let it charge. Check it if the device is low on resources being memory, drive space, those kinds of things. After the exact issue is identified, the resolution steps in sequential order. Back up data before you do things, because things that you think can't destroy data will. Check the manufacturer's website for device-specific troubleshooting tools. Log the resolution steps. Take preventive measures. Software crashes. The recent software changes. Upgrades. Have you upgraded the driver? Have device drivers been upgraded? And if you remember back when we looked at that, you can roll back a driver if it starts causing you issues after you upgrade a driver. If they're conflicting applications, uninstall them, and that can happen. Not so much anymore, but there is an INI, an information file, which goes into the system for these devices. If they're the same one, if you install one piece of software and it keeps another, and it stops another one from working, then that may be what's going on. Windows, starting with Windows 2000 maybe, was supposed to be able to use what's called share at INI so that they can use ones with the same name. Remove unnecessary background applications, check firewalls properly configured, ensure that the security software is working and does not conflict with the firewall. And typically here, when you install a virus checker that has a firewall, it says, which one do you want to use? Do you want to use the Windows firewall, or do you want to use the My firewall? Troubleshooting upgrades of these things. Make sure the device is connected to the internet. Ensure that you have enough available bandwidth and remaining megabytes or gigabytes on your data plan in order to do these upgrades. Check the manufacturer app store for known issues with different platform versions. Verify that you're using the correct password, that the cap lock is not enabled. You may say, that's silly. I've seen that happen, particularly when people were putting the password in. Initially, the caps lock was on, and then they started to try to use the password. The caps lock on, turn it off, and of course the password didn't work. Troubleshoot signal loss, that you have a sufficient signal, that the device that's providing the signal is still there. You haven't walked between the device and a metal wall, a cement wall that has rebar in it, thick cement wall, something that's going to block the signal. There are lots of things that can do that. It can cause signals to bounce around. Physical damage to the device can impact the reception, and we could have poor quality there. Okay, so in this one, troubleshoot, verify you're connected to the wireless networking problem, connected to the wireless access point, that you have an IP address after connecting there using the ipconfig or the ifconfig command to see that you have that you've got an IP address. The service over a network will either be available or deteriorate during busy traffic times. Somebody starts watching, like in that question tonight, somebody starts watching a video, it's going to take a lot of bandwidth. It's going to impact everybody else because they're going to start streaming it. They get the access to the wireless access point and they share it occasionally, but typically they're going to take most of the bandwidth because they were there first. Network will deteriorate with attacks such as a denial of service attack, jamming or scanning, and jamming, signal jamming, frequency jamming, something that can be easy. You can do it to yourself. Fluorescent light can do it to you. A microwave oven where you're got one of the, the long term, you got to put in a 30-minute from frozen dinner can do those things. If connecting using 2G or 3G, you should connect to a cell tower, get an IP address if you have sufficient download capability, let your on your data plan or the provider's broadband network is too congested. I was fortunate tonight it wasn't too congested, which is kind of unusual with a power failure. And apparently I did have enough data, because when I run out of data, it doesn't shut me off, but it does slow me down to like a very few hundred K instead of megs. Mobile subscription and trouble with roaming issues. I don't think that's a problem anymore. It used to be. You used to have to actually sign up for roaming before you could use roaming on the wireless networks. But roaming, does your subscription include roaming? You go to a foreign country, do you go to Canada? Do you have roaming in Canada? Do you have can you use data in Canada? Can you use cell in Canada? From experience, if you go to Canada, it's pretty expensive wireless place. Prepaid balance, if you have a prepaid plan. Cellular activation and authorization. And I don't know that that's going to be an issue, because every time I've ever done that, they've actually activated. I guess if you got one on the order of the mail, but they've always activated it in the store itself. So those may be issues, and those you would have to go to the horse's mouth, I guess, to get those resolved. Email issues, that the email settings are correct. The protocol, SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, typically going to be 25. It's going to be a different one for secure. POP3 going to be 110. POP3 is a mail protocol. When you get to be a network administrator, IMAP is the protocol that you want to use because it keeps the emails on the server. When it keeps emails on the server, you can back up those emails, and then if you get into one of those situations where you have to preserve emails, if your company gets sued, you have to preserve all the emails. You can do that. POP3 allows the user to download and delete the emails from the server itself. So IMAP port 143 is the one that you want your users to use. Ensure that the email password is accurate. There are always reset methods for email, but and a lot of them are using the two-factor now, that you want to change something, and then you have a cell phone registered. You get a text message with a number code in it that you have to confirm that you are you. VPN issues, virtual private network connected to the internet, that the VPN client is running on the device. We talked about VPNs briefly. I think it's an encrypted connection across the internet that allows you to have a secure connection across an insecure network, the insecure network being the internet. Ensure that the credentials being provided to access the VPN are correct. There are commercial VPN providers. Some people are using them now to prevent snoopers from seeing the traffic. If somebody gets your encrypted traffic, it's encrypted. So it's not going to be as big a deal. If it's encrypted, can it be decrypted? Yes, if it's worthwhile, it can be decrypted. Depending on how it's encrypted, they may get part of the conversation, they may get the entire conversation. Ensure that you are not behind an older wireless access point or router that disallows certain types of VPNs. That is, and I think that someplace in the book or in one of the questions or somewhere, I remember seeing the term VPN pass-through, and that's what that's all about. A number of older devices won't allow encrypted or VPNs to connect through them. Used to be kind of an issue at some hotels. You go in and the salesman goes in and is going to create a VPN connection back to the headquarters activity. Well, the hotel wireless won't allow VPN pass-through. So now it's got a problem. If we're not going to do a VPN and I can't connect insecure, then I can't update the database with 10,000 units that I sold today and get the order online. So VPN password, VPN pass-through may be an issue with older devices. Reflective questions, and the reflective questions obviously are for you to reflect on. In your professional experience, have you supported mobile devices? If not, what kind of experience do you have with them? And then what kind of technical support do you think will be expected from an A+ technician as mobile devices become more prominent within the workplace? I think that, or at least what I've experienced for the support, users didn't want support for the physical devices themselves. They owned them. If you let somebody on your network, how much of your network are you going to let those devices on? And that becomes the real question. Because if they own the device, you can't manage the device. You can't force them to put on an antivirus software. You can't force them to upgrade the system. So how much of your network are you going to allow them to connect to? What we allowed them to connect to was what essentially became a guest network. They could get on the internet with their own wireless devices, but they couldn't get onto the internal network, the protected network, when we do those things. I'll quit now. Do you have questions or comments?